One of my favorite games of all time, Fire Emblem Three Houses, just celebrated its 5th anniversary, a half decade on the market, and this was truly a special occasion for all Fire Emblem and strategy RPG fans out there because it gave us the first major console AAA style strategy RPG from Nintendo on the Nintendo Switch, and it really just brought about so many great gameplay aspects and memories that I still hold to this day, and that's why it was so special to talk about the Fire Emblem 5th anniversary to you guys on stream, on Twitter, and right here in this video. So we're going to talk about that in addition to what's next for the Fire Emblem franchise, because we still have to talk about that next game that I've been discussing for quite some time, and we got to get into what's actually going to happen with the Fire Emblem 4 remake, so you absolutely want to stay around for that. But before we get into anything, what's good everyone, OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch RPG and of course Fire Emblem videos as soon as they drop. Now let's go ahead and jump right into this here. July 26, 2019, that was the official release date of Fire Emblem Three Houses on the Nintendo Switch. Now, when the game was first announced back in early 2017 at the Fire Emblem Direct, all we got was a title screen saying, hey, look, Fire Emblem is coming. And Nintendo did that because they also announced Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia and Fire Emblem Heroes, the mobile game. So they didn't want to let people know like, hey, wait a minute, we're not working on something for the Switch, because that had happened many times in the past where they announced something for 3DS or they announced something for mobile and people say, well, what about the home console? What about the Wii U? What about whatever, right? So that was the reason why that they did that. Now, I do think that the announcement was absolutely premature, but it was something that they kind of had to do for Fire Emblem fans out there so people wouldn't ask those questions in videos and say, well, where's the console Fire Emblem game? And it wouldn't put panic throughout the community, as sometimes these things do happen. People do kind of think they're not doing anything if they don't say something right then and there and they announce something for mobile or for something else, at least in those days. Now that we have the Nintendo Switch, everything's on one platform, so we really don't have to worry too much about stuff like that anymore. But back then, we actually did. Now, in that first announcement, there were delays. The game was supposed to come out in 2018, and then it got delayed to early 2019, and then it was supposed to come out early 2019, then it got delayed to summer of 2019. So there was 2 delays, and people don't remember that because of how awesome and how much gameplay there was in Fire Emblem Three Houses, but there was actually 2 delays with the game. But the game absolutely needed to be delayed because if you played it, obviously the graphics aren't necessarily the best, and there's definitely some frame rate stuff here and there. So if you release the game in a worse state, that definitely wouldn't have been good for the lasting legacy of the game. But I do think that everything came together nicely, as it was a massive undertaking between Nintendo, Koei Tecmo, and Intelligent Systems. The hype and anticipation for Fire Emblem Three Houses was higher than any other Fire Emblem game to date, because Fire Emblem had made a drastic spike in popularity from the Nintendo 3DS game Fire Emblem Awakening. So from 2013, 2012 in Japan, 2013 here in the West, all the way up until 2019, Fire Emblem went from a more obscure franchise played by around 800,000 to maybe 1 million people at its peak, all the way up to 2-3 million plus people that were super excited to buy a Fire Emblem game. You're essentially doubling to tripling your audience in that time frame. So there was a lot of anticipation for the first major AAA HD Fire Emblem game on a Nintendo console, and it absolutely delivered in my opinion. But that hype was just delicious. It was so good to see. Nintendo didn't necessarily overload us with different trailers and information beforehand. There was a Fire Emblem Direct that was pretty cool early in 2019. I did like that, or it was at some point in between then before the game came out. So that was cool. So it gave us more of a look of the game, but they didn't really show us a lot. They did give us a little snippet of the 5-year time gap that happens, which was super intriguing, but we didn't know what was going to happen in that time period. We didn't know what was going to happen between them. It was just crazy how it all unfolded. So it was one of the best hype periods that I've ever experienced for any strategy RPG or any Fire Emblem game, any game on the Nintendo Switch. So it was pretty cool to kind of go through that. As for my favorite path in Fire Emblem Three Houses, I played through and know all of them, but I'd absolutely have to say Golden Deer and Blue Lions. Those are incredible. No offense to Edelgard and her warpath, but I just kind of liked what was happening a bit more in those paths. So make sure you let me know what your favorite path is in Fire Emblem Three Houses in the comment section below. Now, like I stated before, the graphics necessarily weren't the best, but I do think that the anime scenes that are in the game and the character models are pretty good. Just some of the environments, not necessarily the best, but the special effects and some of the things they did within the game was really cool, and obviously a dramatic step above the Nintendo 3DS. I mean, we went from not having feet at all in Fire Emblem Awakening to actually having feet a little bit in Fire Emblem Fates to having full HD 3D models and everything that looked at least somewhat modern overall. So it was a pretty big jump from Fire Emblem Fates, Fire Emblem Echoes, to Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I really did appreciate. And I think that they're going to take another step when we get to the next thing here. Now, when it comes to the legacy and the sales of Fire Emblem Three Houses, this was truly a landmark game. People will remember this game for decades to come because of how unique it is in the strategy RPG genre. There are not a lot of major big AAA strategy RPGs out there, and there's not a lot that actually sell as good as this game did, or even review as good as this game did. It has an 89 on Metacritic, which is easily one of the best reviewed strategy RPGs of all time overall, and it sold over 4 million units, which is once again one of the best selling, if not I think the best console selling strategy RPG game of all time as well. So there are a lot of good things that people say about Fire Emblem Three Houses and what it's remembered for, and those sales are still going up. There are people still to this day that go out there and tell me, yo, I just bought Fire Emblem Three Houses new, I just downloaded it digitally on the eShop, and I'm pretty sure some of you guys will be watching this video and saying, you know what, maybe I'll give Fire Emblem Three Houses a try and check it out, which I highly recommend doing so, especially if you can catch it on sale. You can catch it 30 bucks, 40 bucks, some places on sale. Definitely go out there and check it out. It is absolutely worth your time. Big time investment, but it is worth your time picking your house with the blue lions and the black eagles and golden deer. Like, that was one of the best things about the game, and it's such a unique way to present a story that no other game on the Nintendo Switch has done in this type of way. No other first party game. So it's unique with Nintendo, and there's not a lot of other games that even do it, because look at how much you have to do. 3 separate campaigns plus an extra one plus DLC campaign. So absolutely, this game will be remembered for quite some time. And when it came to the anniversary on Twitter and people talking about it, there were many that I saw saying, I'm going to go back in and finish out my route that I was playing, or I'm going to go start up a new save file, or I'm going to do a maddening run. Like, there's just so much stuff this offers, and to me, it's the pure essence of what we love about games, where gameplay and the story and the fact that it's all kind of contained in there when it comes to content and replay value. It's just what makes you love games so much, at least for me. So to me, the legacy is sealed with Fire Emblem Three Houses. It goes down as one of the best of all time, in my opinion. And if you haven't seen my top 25 best turn-based RPGs, Fire Emblem Three Houses definitely is on there. So make sure you guys check out that video. But let's talk about what's next for Fire Emblem, because I think that's the big thing here. I teased it a little bit. Fire Emblem 4, the remake. We need to see what's happening with that game. There's been rumors. I've got some information that Fire Emblem 4 Remake, or Genealogy of the Holy War, that is the game from the Super Nintendo. That is Sigurd's game. I've talked about it so many times on this channel. That game is still supposedly coming. Apparently the game is done. Nintendo's just kind of sitting on it. I do think that Fire Emblem 4 Remake is coming, and I do feel that it's just pretty much done, and we're just waiting for Nintendo to announce it. I do feel that Nintendo could announce the game later this year in September, or maybe even after that, or they could take that over and have it be a dual launch for the next system, or just have it on the next system. I'm not exactly sure what's happening with Fire Emblem 4 Remake, but I do feel that it's still a thing. For those who are wondering what's going on with the game, it's still a thing. And that one you should be really excited for. I know most of you guys haven't played it or don't really know too much about the game, but that is definitely the darkest and most craziest Fire Emblem game ever. And many of the things that they put in Fire Emblem, the newer games, came from Fire Emblem 4. So it should feel even modern, even if they don't do many different tweaks to the mechanics and the systems. There's still a lot of cool stuff in that game, which they will do tweaks to the mechanics and the systems, because they always do that for the remakes of Fire Emblem games. But I'm very excited to see how they portray the art style and what they do, because we've only seen Sigurd in HD in Fire Emblem Engage, and Fire Emblem Engage is awesome, but that art style absolutely does not fit what Fire Emblem 4 is about. There's no way they're going to use the same art style. I've talked about them potentially using like the Samurai Warrior style for the art style in the Fire Emblem 4 remake. I think that would work well, like with the shading and like the pencil lines and things like that, considering the art in the game on the Super Nintendo cover or Super Famicom. But yeah, we're gonna have to just wait and see exactly what they do with that. But to me, Fire Emblem has been great on the Nintendo Switch. I think that there's a healthy base of millions of people that are willing to buy Fire Emblem. Obviously, Fire Emblem Engage, that did over 1.6 million units plus as more of a side anniversary style of game without all of the stuff that usually makes Fire Emblem tick, like with Fire Emblem Fates or Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Three Houses. And I think that Fire Emblem Three Hopes, that sold over 1 million units, in addition to Fire Emblem Warriors selling over 1 million units as well. So Fire Emblem has blossomed into a stable, good franchise where the spin-offs and the side games can sell over 1 million with a smaller budget, and the big main games can actually do multiple millions of units with Fire Emblem Awakening, Fire Emblem Fates, and Three Houses. So the next Fire Emblem game is definitely going to take things up to the next level. But let's go ahead and talk about that, because I do feel that Nintendo is probably going to work, obviously, with Intelligent Systems. They're the Fire Emblem people, but they absolutely have to bring somebody else in. I do feel that Intelligent Systems is very good, but I think Koei Tecmo will probably be working with them again on the next Fire Emblem game. And if they follow in the footsteps of Fire Emblem Three Houses, I do feel that maybe they will take that same engine, the Warriors engine, take that same thing and just upgrade it. I think that they can build off of that base, but of course add so much stuff. You have a brand new system. It's probably not going to be on the Nintendo Switch. It's probably going to be a Switch 2 exclusive. You can build off of that with a much more powerful system, and of course create different settings, different environments. You can kind of retool everything within that same engine and build it to where you don't have as many issues as they had trying to get Fire Emblem Three Houses up and going, because there was a lot of problems. Obviously, like I talked about, 2 delays with that game. So build off what you've done, but of course change up what the game is and where the setting is and all of that. Now, I do think that the multiple paths work well for Fire Emblem games. I feel that Fire Emblem Fates and Fire Emblem Three Houses, those are the 2 best-selling Fire Emblem games of all time, and both of those games have different paths. Fire Emblem Three Houses was awesome. It put all the paths that you can do, with the exception of one from the DLC, all in the base game, whereas Fire Emblem Fates actually split it up into multiple games. So I do think that they can go with the multiple path route, but just make sure, of course, it's all on that one cartridge. And I think everything would be good there. I think that works well for Fire Emblem games. It creates replay value, and people overall generally tend to like that. So I do feel that probably going to go with something like that. Then it could go back to a single path with an expanded type of story and DLC like Fire Emblem Awakening. I think that could also work well too. It just depends on what they want to do, their writers, and the story that they want to tell. If it makes sense to make multiple paths, then do it that way. If it makes sense to have that singular story like a Fire Emblem Awakening or like a Path of Radiance, then do that. So I'm down for whatever the story and what the writers want to do in the game. But of course, having a improvement across the board from a technical perspective is something that absolutely needs to happen as well. Improved visuals, frame rate, loading time. For me, loading time is very big. I think that all of that is going to be possible with the Nintendo Switch 2. New combat mechanics, new map mechanics, new ways to engage enemies, new ways to team up with your partners, new ways to create different gameplay opportunities. These are things that Fire Emblem has been very good at over the decades that it's been around, introducing new tactics and new ways to play the game that make it more fun, make it more approachable, and also add in challenge for gamers. I think that the story obviously needs to be good. Story being incredible, that's something that Fire Emblem games usually do. Awakening, Fates, Three Houses, and even Engage to a degree. I do think that that one's not necessarily as good as the mainline games like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn and all the great big mainline Fire Emblem games, but they still do a good job overall with most of the stories. So I do feel that obviously an incredible story will be happening. more passive multiplayer options, that's something that Fire Emblem Engage did pretty well, to where you can go on, have a map, you can do a turn, let somebody else do a turn, and then come back and play it from there. I think that stuff is pretty cool, and you can take some of those rewards from the multiplayer and then take them over to the single player. So if they want to do that again, I think that would be absolutely awesome. That creates, once again, a bit more value, creates more things to do, and it creates just basically a game that can last longer than if you didn't have that. And maybe they even do some actual multiplayer like they've done before in the past. Fire Emblem Fates, you can actually go into your castle and you can go fight other people with different heroes that you've collected. So maybe they circle back to even something like that with online. Although a lot of people didn't like that as much, some people really got into it. So if they can balance that and actually make it better, and if it works and they don't cut anything from the single player experience, then I do feel that they can do something. But once again, I want to make sure that I emphasize this, that if they're going to do multiplayer, that they create the single player first and it's a full good experience. Then if they can do multiplayer stuff. But if that's going to compromise the single player at all, definitely don't do it. So that's what I think what's next for Fire Emblem. We're going to see Fire Emblem 4 remake at some point. There's going to be a big announcement for the next Fire Emblem game, and you're going to see improvements across the board when it comes to the next Fire Emblem game from Fire Emblem Three Houses. But what do you guys think about Fire Emblem Three Houses and the 5th anniversary, in addition to all of the Fire Emblem games on the Nintendo Switch, and what's next for the Fire Emblem franchise on the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch and RPG videos right here on screen. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.